In 1955, the women of the Rio Piedras housing projects were told they were being given a miracle, a tiny white tablet that promised freedom. What they weren't told was that they were the primary subjects of a massive, unregulated human experiment. They were the disposable front line for a medication that would change the world. But for many of them, the price of that miracle was paid in blood, silence, and secrets. Secrets buried in unmarked graves. Now, let us open the file on the Puerto Rico Protocol. Margaret Sanger's journey began in the tenements of New York. As a public health nurse, she saw the devastation of poverty firsthand. Margaret worked 12-hour shifts, climbing the stairs of rotting tenements to treat women whose bodies were broken by a dozen pregnancies. She watched women die from frequent pregnancies and the horrors of back-alley abortions. It was a cycle of misery she was determined to break. In 1916, Sanger opened the Brownsville Clinic in Brooklyn. It was the first of its kind in America, and it was a direct challenge to the state. In 1921, she founded the American Birth Control League, but her vision was complicated by a dark alignment with the eugenics movement. She utilized eugenic rhetoric to gain legitimacy, arguing that birth control could eliminate undesirable hereditary traits from the population. Sanger endorsed the sterilization of those she deemed unfit. For her, the pill was a tool for social engineering as much as liberation. But a vision needs funding. For Sanger, that funding came from a woman whose own tragedy drove her toward the same goal. Katharine McCormick was the heiress to the international harvester fortune. In 1904, she became the first woman to earn a biology degree from MIT. Her degree in biology was more than a status symbol. It gave her the clinical eye to oversee every step of the research. Her husband, Stanley, suffered from schizophrenia. This tragedy led her to vow never to have children, dedicating her vast wealth to scientific research. In 1953, McCormick met Gregory Pincus. She wrote a check for $40,000 to start research the government deemed too controversial. She was a warrior, providing nearly $2 million over the next decade. She closely monitored the lab, pushing for a magic pill in her lifetime. Pincus was the experimental biologist. He discovered that synthetic progesterone could arrest ovulation, effectively mimicking pregnancy to prevent it. Pincus was a scientific outcast. His early experiments in vitro fertilization had scandalized the academic world and cost him his career. His tenure was stripped. He partnered with Dr. John Rock, a Catholic gynecologist. Rock's involvement was strategic. He hoped to win church approval for the pill. Under the Comstock Laws, distributing birth control information was considered obscene. They needed a place beyond the law's reach. They looked south, to Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory where contraception laws were non-existent and the population was dense. Officials saw the island as overpopulated. To the eugenicists, it was the perfect laboratory for a human experiment. There was already a network of 67 birth control clinics on the island. The infrastructure for exploitation was already in place. Chapter 2. The Rio Piedras Tactics. In 1955, they targeted the poorest women, those desperate to stop having children. They were told they were being given a miracle pill. They were not told it was an experimental drug. They were not given informed consent. Pincus targeted semi-literate or illiterate women. He reasoned that if they could follow the regimen, anyone in the world could. Social workers went door to door in housing projects. They promised freedom from pregnancy, but they never mentioned the word trial. They never said experimental. But the drug, Enovid, was a chemical sledgehammer. The initial dose was 10 milligrams, 10 to 100 times today's pills. Dr. John Rock chose this massive dose to ensure 100% effectiveness. He feared any failure would ruin the drug's reputation. It also contained 150 micrograms of estrogen, a dose intended to ensure 100% effectiveness at any cost. The side effects were catastrophic. Women reported fainting, excruciating headaches, and blood coming from the eyes. 17% dropped out. Dr. Edris Rice Ray, medical director on the island, reported these severe reactions to Pincus. She warned the dose was too high. Dr. Edris Rice Ray reported these severe reactions to Pincus. She warned that the dose was too high. 17% dropped out. She called it unacceptable. Pincus dismissed her findings. He claimed the women were imagining the pain. He called them unreliable historians. 3 women died during the trials. No autopsies were performed. No investigation followed. Their deaths were never linked to the drug in official reports. They were marked as lost to follow-up. Pincus and Rock pushed for approval, burying the truth to protect the miracle. Chapter 3. The Pathfinder Files. Behind the clinics was Clarence Gamble, a eugenicist who saw the population as a threat. In Skokie, Illinois, executives met in secret. They knew the potential profit, but they feared the public fallout of a human trial. They aggregate the cycles. Gamble's internal memos explicitly stated his goal: to reduce the birth rates of what he called unfit populations. This was warfare. In 1939, Sanger wrote to Gamble regarding the Negro Project. She stated, "We do not want word to go out that we want to exterminate the population." While the context is debated, the optics remain a cornerstone of this dark history. Control disguised as reproductive choice. By 1956, 1 out of every 3 Puerto Rican women of childbearing age had been sterilized, known simply as La Operación. Many were coerced by doctors who told them it was the only way to escape poverty. This was the highest rate of sterilization in the world. The graph tells the true story of La Operación. From 1950 to 1970, the birth rate didn't just decline, it crashed under state pressure, a demographic echo. For him, a few unfit lives lost in Puerto Rico was a small price for a cleaner population. His goal was to reduce the birth rates of the unfit. Chapter 4. The Nelson Reckoning. In January 1970, Senator Gaylord Nelson investigated the pill's life-threatening risks. The reckoning finally came in 1970, the Nelson Pill hearings. For the first time, activists confronted the medical establishment. They spoke of the lack of informed consent. They spoke for the women of Rio Piedras who could no longer speak for themselves. But activists like Alice Wolfson refused to be silenced. They interrupted the proceedings, shouting from the gallery, "No more guinea pigs." Wolfson famously asked, "Why are 10 million women being used as guinea pigs?" She demanded informed consent for every woman in America. The hearings initially featured only men. Not a single woman who actually took the pill was allowed to testify about her experience. Silence was expected. Alice Wolfson's words echoed, "We will no longer tolerate intimidation by white-coated gods, antiseptically directing our lives." The era of silence ended. The pill liberated millions, but it was built on exploitation. We must remember the women of Rio Piedras who paid the price. Their activism led to the patient package insert, a federal requirement that risks and side effects be clearly listed in every packet. The pill liberated millions, but we must never forget the price. The women who were treated as disposable data points in a lab. The demographic echo remains. Puerto Rico has one of the lowest birth rates in the world, a project that began in a lab 70 years ago. The file is closed. Subscribe to Silent Archive for more forgotten history and comment "Next Dark History" below to cast your vote.